Imagine a world in which everything is an illusion, where you can't tell the difference between things and their shadows. Reality and its reflections.
I want to begin with a thought experiment. A group of prisoners have been locked up in a cave all of their lives and forced to face a blank wall. As people pass behind them, shadows are cast by a fire onto the wall in front of them. And the prisoners, because they've never seen anything else, presume those shadows are reality. But then, one day, one momentous day, the prisoners break their chains and turn round, and they discover that all along, what they thought was real was only an image.
This unsettling allegory was created more than 2,000 years ago by the Greek philosopher Plato. But it has never been more relevant. After all, ours is also an age of shadows. We too live in a world of flickering screens and all too convincing illusions.
Over the last few decades, images have become more like reality than ever before. And reality has become more like an image than ever before. And the result is that we, like Plato's prisoners before us, can't always tell the difference between them.
In this final episode, I want to explore this ancient but contemporary confusion. How artists and filmmakers have become increasingly adept at deceiving us. How photographs can no longer be trusted. How our lives have been conquered by screens. And how the world itself is increasingly being transformed into an image. Artists have always been illusionists. In Plato's time, a painter called Zeuxis depicted a bunch of grapes so realistic that birds descended from the sky to peck at them. Later artists turned trompe-l'oeil illusion into an art form in its own right.
We often think that those impeccable techniques and that mind-boggling patience were lost in the 20th century, when artists supposedly forgot how to draw, or at least couldn't be bothered to paint anything that actually looked like something. But that isn't true. In fact, in the second half of the century, there emerged a small group of artists who matched and perhaps even exceeded the master illusionists of the past. At it, you can see the texture of the linen canvas. You can see the surprisingly loose strokes of paint. It's only when we step back that our eyes and our brain convert these abstract dabs and dashes of paint into a bowl of fruit. And Ventrone wants us to do that. He wants us to be aware of that deception, because he knows better than anyone else that this isn't reality. It's a mirror of reality, it's a reflection of reality that, like Plato's prisoners, we keep falling for.
Ventrone is part of a much wider artistic movement that began across the Atlantic.
In the late 1960s, a number of American artists began to push the limits of painting. They based their pictures on photographs, often copying them in their entirety, going to exhausting lengths to disguise the very fact that they were paintings. The resulting images were deeply confusing, blurring the boundary between the real and the represented, the graphic and the photographic.
Where other artists had seen in photography the end of naturalistic painting and had pursued forms of abstraction, hyper-realist artists like Richard Estes, Audrey Flack, and Charles Bell chose to embrace it. Responding to the clarity and accuracy of photographs and attempting to replicate them in paint. You may ask, why did they even bother? Because they belonged to an age in which the relationship between images and reality was changing. They weren't simply trying to copy reality, they were trying to question it, and ultimately to subvert it. And this they did not just in 2 dimensions, but in 3. Australian-born artist Ron Muick produces sculpted figures that are uncannily lifelike, except for their scale. This one is called Youth. It depicts a boy, perhaps only 13 or 14 years old, looking at something alarming.
Underneath the t-shirt, on the right side of the abdomen, is a stab wound. And Muick shows him right at the moment of discovery, before the pain, before the panic, before he knows what to do next. This is a portrait of a young life that is quite literally on a knife edge. Like all of Muick's work, the attention to detail is breathtaking. The skin has been sculpted in clay and then moulded in silicone, and it is covered in veins and wrinkles. The hair has been made from countless polyester fibres that have been individually curled and cut and dyed and attached. Even the feet are revelatory. Muick has gone to the lengths of applying what looks like dirt or mud to these craggy teenage toes. And the illusion is enhanced by the fact that he is wearing real clothes, an immaculate white t-shirt that is being rapidly stained with blood, and these blue Levi jeans that are slipping down his waist and revealing this green pair of underpants beneath. But this extraordinary, painstaking illusion is completely undone by its scale. This boy is probably only 2 feet tall, not much higher than a toy. And this, I think, has the effect of emphasizing his vulnerability and his victimhood.
Muick's unforgettable, incongruously sized works span the full cycle of human life. A newborn baby that dwarfs its viewers. An oversized, awkward teenage girl. A series of monumental self-portraits complete with designer stubble. And perhaps most movingly, a tiny sculpture of the artist's father laid out on the slab after death, as if awaiting the mortician's blade.
All of Ron Muick's works reflect on the human condition, what it's like to be an awkward teenager, or to grow old, or to lose a parent. And realism is an integral component of their success. Because when we look at sculptures like this, it's hard not to see in them our own family, our friends, our neighbours, and ultimately, of course, ourselves.
Both Muick and Ventrone were pushing representation to its limits. But both worked in traditional mediums, painting and sculpture. Over the course of the 20th century, one technological development would rip these traditions apart and open the door to another dimension of visual manipulation.
The digital revolution is the most important cultural transformation of our lifetime, up there, in my view, with the invention of the printing press and the birth of photography. It has changed all art forms, making them more accessible than ever before. But at its heart lies an exceptionally simple conceit. It reduces everything, whether it's a painting or a photograph, a piece of music, or indeed this television programme, to binary code, to a series of ones and zeros. And romantic gesture. Indeed, a few minutes later he proposed, and she said yes. But what he didn't realise at the time was that that photograph would go on to become one of the most significant images of the 20th century and would transform our entire visual landscape.
John Knoll, with his brother Thomas, would go on to create Photoshop, the image manipulation software that has become a byword for photographic retouching. And his picture of Jennifer in Paradise would become the Photoshop guinea pig, the image used to demonstrate the capabilities of the software.
A picture may no longer be worth 1,000 words. These days, the picture that the camera takes may well not be the picture that we end up seeing in newspapers and magazines.
It's hard to overstate the impact of Photoshop. Image manipulation wasn't new, of course. Frank Hurley had used it in his First World War composites, and so too had the Soviet propagandists of the 1930s and 40s. But John Knoll's software dramatically simplified the process, making it possible for practically anyone to doctor images in seamless ways.
John Knoll once said, "Any tool can be used for good or bad. It's really the ethics of the artist using it." Sadly, the ethics of those using Photoshop haven't always been beyond reproach. It has become a tool too often used in the pursuit of perfection, to improve images in an unrealistic and undetectable way, presenting a heavily manipulated image as reality, and further undermining our faith in what we see. When John Knoll took that photograph of his girlfriend on the beach, they were enjoying a well-earned holiday. They'd been working 70 hours a week on visual effects for a movie. The 1988 feature film, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Which brilliantly merged live action with animation.
You had plenty money, 1922. You let other women make a fool of you. Why don't you do right like some other man?
There had been live-action animations as early as the 1920s, but this film was groundbreaking, using special effects to portray a realistic interaction between cartoons and actors. Those effects were the work of a now famous American company.
Industrial light and magic was born of necessity. In the mid-1970s, George Lucas was developing a new project called Star Wars, which required an unprecedented amount of special effects.
Beyond the Death Star, right?
Well,
as the fighters go in.
As the fighters go in, we assume that the rebel cruisers also start to go in.
Yeah.
Now, Lucas couldn't find a single company in Hollywood that was able to produce these effects, so he was forced to establish his own. ILM went on to develop a range of new special effects technologies, but many of their techniques had been around for years.
Special effects are as old as the movies. Many were based on early theatrical stage tricks. The 1902 film Voyage to the Moon had pioneered various special effects, including match cutting and animation. Later films perfected and expanded these tricks. From intricate model making to back projection and blue screen technology. But one film effect exploited by George Lucas went further back still, to the ancient tradition of trompe-l'oeil painting.
Painting on large sheets of glass has always been an important special effect in film, but recently they've become spectacular in the way they're being used.
Return of the Jedi in 1983, and it belongs to one of the film's most spectacular scenes. It depicts the Imperial docking bay at the Death Star. Now, in the completed film, this gap down here was filled with live-action footage of Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader surrounded by stormtroopers. Now, seeing this picture in the flesh is obviously exceptionally exciting, but I'm above all struck by how handmade it seems. This picture wasn't painted onto some professional matte painting material because they didn't exist at the time. It was painted, believe it or not, onto a glass shower screen that the artist had purchased from a nearby hardware store. And looking at it closely, it really is utterly amazing how painterly it is. Look, for instance, how the soldiers become more and more sketchy as they recede into the distance until right at the end, all they are is just a few dots and dashes. And down here, the shine on that polished floor has been brushed in so loosely that it's difficult to believe we were ever deceived by it. And yet, all the evidence suggests that looser, more painterly, more sketchy matte paintings are a more convincing illusion than more precise digital ones because they far better simulate the way that we actually look at the world.
In the early 1990s, Industrial Light and Magic would develop new techniques, taking visual effects to another level. In 1993, a jeep full of scientists driving through the lush grasslands of a tropical island caught sight of something astonishing. Something that hadn't existed for millennia. And cinema audiences around the world felt the popcorn fall from their mouths and the scales from their eyes.
I vividly remember going to see Jurassic Park as a teenager and being completely astounded when that huge Brachiosaurus first appeared on screen. I'd seen visual effects before, of course. I'd watched Superman flying over New York City and X-Wing fighters attacking the Death Star, but this felt different. That dinosaur looked so fleshy and organic and alive. In fact, it looked just as real as the actors who appeared alongside it.
This is how people must have felt seeing aerial photography or early motion pictures for the first time. A sense of awe and wonder. Because here, the real and the imagined had been woven together so flawlessly that it was hard to tell them apart. After Jurassic Park, visual effects developed exponentially. From Tom Hanks being seamlessly inserted into historic archive footage in Forrest Gump.
Congratulations. How do you feel?
I gotta pay.
I believe he said he had to go pee.
to modern feature films like Gravity.
You need to focus. I'm losing visual of you. In a few seconds, I won't be able to track you. You need to detach.
Or the live-action Lion King.
Hollywood has always been a dream factory, constantly inventing new techniques to trick our eyes and make us believe the otherwise unbelievable. But the problem is there's a law of diminishing returns. The better filmmakers get at creating lifelike illusions, the less we are impressed by them. And crucially, the less likely we are to believe anything they show us is real.
Where once images were material objects, paper, ink, light-sensitive crystals on celluloid film, they are now created on computers from digital code, and that code is much easier to manipulate. Computer algorithms can now generate a wealth of unique, individual photographic portraits of people who never existed, and can map facial movements onto existing footage, so-called deepfakes, making people say things they never said.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet.
Seamlessly manipulated videos with the power to shape world events. Fake news.
I'm urging all Labour members and supporters to consider people before privilege and back Boris Johnson to continue as our Prime Minister.
Why do we find this so alarming? Probably because we rely more than ever before on images for information. Until the middle of the 20th century, the vast majority of news was either read or heard.
Svetlana Stalin is hidden tonight somewhere in Switzerland.
Even in the 1960s, television news was hardly a visual feast.
Washington is that President Johnson personally ordered that she should not be taken to the United States.
That began to change in the 1970s.
Stand by, ready, three, take three, mic here. Three, start to slow zoom in a little bit.
But a major breakthrough came on the 1st of June 1980.
One center up.
Good evening, I'm David Walker.
And I'm Lois Hart. Now here's the news.
CNN was the first television channel to offer 24-hour news coverage. And it transformed the nature of news itself.
The White House did not give him an advantage.
CNN turned news into visual spectacle. It placed photogenic anchors into colourful studios and then surrounded them with a blizzard of logos and infographics and captions and tickers and shimmering screens. Importantly, it bombarded viewers with hour after hour of moving images, many of them beamed live from all over the world.
CNN, and later other networks, generated unprecedented quantities of newsreel footage, which defined the next 2 decades.
Linda, we've been waiting for you. What can you tell us?
Hey, Paul, we're standing by. We haven't come live.
Most major events of the 1980s and 1990s were immortalized by news crews' cameras. Some of them were tragic, some uplifting, while others were thrillingly exciting.
The man in the car says he would not give himself up. He's in the back of the vehicle, he has a gun to his head, and he says he will hurt himself.
But despite their immediacy, all were strangely removed from reality. Separated by screens, watching from the comfort of our homes, actual events took on the feel of feature films and soap operas. The real world converted into the language of television.
Thanks to news cameras, the past had, more comprehensively than ever before, been converted into and preserved as a series of images. But that process didn't only apply to the past. Rolling news ran in real time, broadcasting events as they happened.
By the start of the new millennium, people understood that for a news event to be truly momentous, it needed to be telegenic. It was a realization that had catastrophic consequences.
This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers.
On a sunny Tuesday morning in September 2001, the world changed.
Calling our sources and trying to figure out exactly what happened, but clearly something relatively devastating happening this morning there.
9/11 was atrocity conceived as spectacle, an attack designed to be filmed, to be broadcast, and to be watched. Its enduring power was derived from photography and rolling television coverage. By the time a second plane hit the South Tower 17 minutes later, it did so on live television.
And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Wait, hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll tell you what's going on.
Okay, just put Winston on pause there for just a minute.
I watched those harrowing images as they unfolded live on television, but I vividly remember thinking that they didn't seem real. Not because I couldn't grasp the scale of the disaster, though I couldn't, but quite frankly because they looked like they came from a movie. It really was like watching one of the Hollywood action films I'd seen so many times before. The parallels were deliberate. The perpetrators of 9/11 aped the language of cinema in order to produce an event that would resonate with Western audiences and above all would look good on screen. Fittingly, every part of this quintessentially visual event was immortalised by remarkable images, but all raised uncomfortable questions about our own complicity in looking. Marty Lederhandler, who had photographed the D-Day landings more than 50 years earlier, climbed a midtown skyscraper to film a panoramic view of the city with the burning towers as almost incidental background. Life continuing amid unthinkable trauma. President George W. Bush was photographed hearing news of the attacks in a primary school classroom. A lone firefighter caught in the glare of a camera flash as he climbed the North Tower just minutes before it collapsed. The falling man. Visual culture helped us see 9/11 at the time, but it's also helped us come to terms with it ever since. This memorial, whose ponds stand on the footprints of the lost buildings, is now visited by almost 7 million people every year. If the terrorists had turned atrocity into spectacle, then Americans have reclaimed spectacle to help heal their wounds. But for me, the most beautiful and most profound visual response to 9/11 is not a photograph or a film, nor a vast public memorial. It is a small painting by the German artist Gerhard Richter. Gerhard Richter was flying to New York on the 11th of September 2001, and his plane actually had to be rerouted to Canada for safety. In 2003, he decided to make an artwork based on the attacks, but it wasn't easy. He originally made a photorealist painting of the second plane crashing into the South Tower and exploding into a ball of flames. But he wasn't happy with it. It all seemed too familiar.
This was the problem. Of course, I painted it first really so colorful. And then I had slowly to destroy it. and I made it banal.
Richter took a kitchen knife and scraped away the details, revealing the layers of paint, even the knobbles of the canvas beneath them. He then took some grey and white paint and smeared them across the picture until the buildings began to disappear. Richter was unmaking the image just as the terrorists had unmade the Twin Towers. The result, I think, is exceptionally powerful. It's a genuinely original response to a tragedy that's drenched in so much cliché. It is, for my money, one of the great history paintings of the modern age, up there with Picasso's Guernica. But unlike most history paintings, it isn't large. Richter deliberately made it the size of an average television, because that was the medium through which most of us witnessed the events of that day.
"9/11 was the definitive visual event, living on in the videos, photos, paintings and monuments that represent it. But most of its defining images were created by professionals. If it had happened only a year or two later, it would have looked very different." Ericsson T68i, and it was first released in the UK in 2002. Now, it was a pretty good phone. It had a 256 colour display, it had Bluetooth, it even had customisable ringtones. But what made it really special was this attachment, which you had to purchase separately. And when you connected them together, they became one of the very first camera phones ever available in the UK. Now, the quality wasn't particularly good, and if you wanted to take a selfie, you had to rely largely on luck. But this plastic handset was the beginning of a revolution. At first, many thought this new feature was a useless novelty that wouldn't last. They were wrong. Everyone now avails themselves of it. The average mobile phone today comes with a camera of such high specification that it actually shoots professional quality footage. In fact, the sequence you've just been watching has largely been filmed on my own mobile phone, which is already 3 years out of date. The camera phone has given everyone the ability to photograph and film the world, and then to share it with their peers, allowing them to do what news networks did before them. Recording world-changing events. Helping to shape them. And giving a voice and a platform to the displaced and dispossessed. And yet in this world of image manipulation, camera phones also have the power to manipulate us. There is something about scratchy mobile phone images and grabbed camera phone footage that makes us believe that what we're seeing must be true, when too often it isn't. One artist in particular has played with this idea brilliantly. In May 1999, Alison Jackson was reaching the end of her studies here at London's Royal College of Art. As part of her graduation show, she exhibited a series of photographs. One of them proved particularly controversial.
This is an exceptionally elegant, beautifully lit, deeply romantic portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales, and her boyfriend Dodi Al-Fayed, together with their lively little baby. Well, obviously it's not. It's actually a portrait of one lookalike and another lookalike, together with a lively little baby. Now, even today, this photograph feels on the verge of being improper. But 20 years ago, back in 1999, the context was very different. Diana had only been dead for 2 years, her children were still in mourning, the nation was still in mourning, and people, quite frankly, were outraged.
But it wasn't only intended to shock.
Jackson had always been fascinated in the nature of celebrity, and specifically how fame had this unusual ability to transform real three-dimensional people into mere images.
By playing on people's perceptions of celebrity and celebrities.
I'm fascinated how what you think is real isn't necessarily real. And the camera can lie, and it makes it very, very easy with sort of the mass bombardment of imagery to tell untruths.
Her photographs and her film clips, many of which have the grainy, snatched, long lens feel of paparazzi shots or illicit camera phone footage, give an impression of authenticity, of a glimpse behind the curtain, the reality behind the image. Jackson creates scenarios we have all imagined, deliberately raising questions about whether we can believe what we see. And often, she is exceptionally funny.
Techniques from a world saturated in images and screens and telephoto lenses. She preys on our own addiction to images as well as our faith in them, but then she turns that faith on its head, proving again and again and again that images can't be trusted.
Jackson's meditation on celebrity and our fascination with it is all about the image. It is, as Jackson pointed out in relation to Princess Diana, the main, if not the only way in which we connect with our idols. Though now, an app makes it rather easier. In recent years, you may have noticed a curious feature of cafe culture. People can't resist photographing their food. For many, eating and drinking has become an afterthought, the main event being 3 courses of image making.
Cappuccinos, flat whites and skinny double-shot matcha lattes aren't the only victims of this new craze. Today people, particularly young people, are photographing everything. And when they're not taking photographs, they are doctoring them, sharing them, and indeed commenting on other people's photographs.
This ubiquitous trend is primarily the result of Instagram, an app created in 2010 that allows users not simply to take and share their images, but to manipulate them, using a range of visual effects that were once the preserve of darkroom professionals. Instagram has transformed the way we take and view photographs. Where once they were treasured personal possessions, they are now a social currency, used to communicate and self-promote. This is one of the most popular images on Instagram, the singer Beyoncé with her twin sons Rumi and Sir. It's a beautifully conceived and executed image, one that cleverly plays on our visual literacy. Even unconsciously, we overlay it with historical context. Instagram currently has more than 1 billion users who upload about 100 million images every single day. It has encouraged show-offs and narcissists all over the world and led to some truly ghastly photographs. But it has also had positive effects.
The camera phone and Instagram have made us more observant. They have encouraged people to look at the world more closely than before, to notice its infinite loveliness and oddness, and then to transform it into a small, square, perfectly composed image.
these images can of course also get in the way of reality. Take a walk around any tourist attraction, one thing is guaranteed. Most visitors will be gazing at it through a screen. The Mona Lisa is the most famous painted image in the world. It attracts 30,000 visitors every day. Many have travelled thousands of miles to see the painting in the flesh. After hours of queuing, they are granted just a few precious seconds in front of Leonardo's masterpiece. So what do? They get their phones out.
I've been in this room for about an hour now, watching the public as they get their chance to meet the world's most famous image. And what's really surprised me is how few of them actually look at it. Most of them are staring instead into the screens of their camera phones, which doesn't make any sense at all because they could get a far better reproduction from the shop next door. Now, it's easy to be dismissive, but what they're doing is, I think, really quite profound. They're taking photographs of the Mona Lisa not to document the painting itself, but to document their encounter with the painting. The photograph becomes the proof that they've been here and seen it.
It's a mentality neatly summed up by that maxim of the Instagram generation: pics, or it didn't happen. I post, therefore I am. What a powerful thought that is. Image is no longer dependent on reality. Reality has become dependent on images. More than that, reality is fast being transformed into an image.
There was once an empire, powerful beyond all imagining, with territories stretching far and wide. So its emperor appointed a team of cartographers to map his great dominion. Over the years, their map grew ever larger and ever more detailed until it became the same size as the terrain it charted. Soon, the mountains, rivers, and cities of the empire disappeared beneath it. And in the end, all that was left was the map.
It is only a story, of course, about a world made obsolete by the very thing that represents it. But over the last 15 years, a transformation in digital cartography has turned that imperial dream into a reality.
In February 2005, Google Maps was launched. It was a hugely ambitious project, mapping the world in fantastic detail, then making it accessible not just to powerful rulers, but to any armchair traveller in possession of an internet connection. But perhaps its greatest innovation was its use of satellite imagery, which showed the world from a bird's eye view, as a series of aerial photographs.
From Google Maps to Google Earth, as technology developed, so too did the detail and range of the mapping. Russell Kirsch's first digital image of his sun back in 1957 had been 176 pixels square. 60 years later, Google analysed 700 trillion pixels of data to produce their maps. Three-dimensional elevations allow you to examine the Colosseum in Rome, to buzz around the top of the Eiffel Tower, or to cruise above Shibuya Crossing in Tokyo. The addition of 360-degree photographs of city streets led to Street View, allowing people to travel through the world block by block, down to your own front door or to a remote general store and diner in the middle of the desert.
I remember when Google's Street View first came out, I lost innumerable hours clicking my way down roads in random parts of the world simply to have a look around. The images themselves were mostly quite boring. There were a lot of grass verges and backs of lorries, but the experience was nevertheless exceptionally empowering. Never before had the world seemed so small and so graspable.
This is the real world reduced to digital code. The 21st century equivalent of aerial photography or X-rays. Technology that fundamentally changes the way we see and interact with the world around us. But what has it done to our sense of wonder? Does the ability to go anywhere on our computers lessen the thrill of seeing the original?
Modern mapping technology is a useful tool, but on another level, it's much more than that. Because when you think about it, Google and other companies have done something really quite remarkable. Meter by meter, street by street, they have created and are still creating a parallel reality, a second world, albeit one constructed entirely out of images.
Street View represents the nursery slopes of immersive realities. Modern computer games create similarly detailed worlds for players not simply to explore, but to interact with. While virtual reality technology is making the experience of these imagined places more overwhelming than ever before. Google hasn't only been imaging the world. Since 2011, its technicians have photographed more than 45,000 artworks. Some of them with a state-of-the-art camera. Its photographs are made up of 1 billion pixels, capturing artworks in breathtaking detail, revealing what is often invisible to the naked eye.
This is one of my favourite paintings in the history of art. It's The Harvesters, painted by Peter Bruegel in 1565. The original is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and it's roughly this big. But with this clever device, I can make it the size of a room. And this allows us to see the picture in staggering detail. In the original painting, these peasants are only a few centimetres high, but now they are the size of real human beings, if not bigger. And this guy has spotted us. He is staring right out of the picture as he eats his cheese sandwich. But this technology doesn't only unlock the foreground, it also unlocks the background. And if we zoom back here, we can see some monks have taken off their habits and are having a dip in a pond. But this is nothing. If we go back down into the foreground, we can even see Bruegel's technique. We can see the outline just below the surface of the paint. And down here, we can see the individual paint strokes applied with amazing freedom across the panel. And this close up, it almost looks like we are staring at a Vincent van Gogh. But let me show you something even more exciting than that. Over here, this is a fingerprint, and it may well be Bruegel's own fingerprint made 500 years ago. And you know, in all my time looking at this picture, I've never seen this before now.
Bruegel's fingerprint does nothing if not emphasize the physicality of the original painting. Google here may only be copying unique objects, but they can help us see old artworks in new ways, making them far more accessible. But in our unusually volatile times, they have the potential to do more than that.
Why do we make images? Well, the oldest reason is absence. We create images to remind us of the things we are losing. According to the Roman writer Pliny, art itself began at the very moment that two lovers were separated. Before her boyfriend embarked on a long journey, a young woman traced his silhouette onto the wall so she could remember him while he was away. Now, we might not draw many silhouettes anymore, but we still use images in just this way.
This process isn't only personal. In a rapidly changing world, images have captured disappearing tribes, species under threat, and environments facing destruction. With this in mind, let us return to where we began, with shadows on the wall of a cave. In 1994, a group of French explorers made a staggering discovery in the Ardèche region of southern France. Chauvet Cave contains one of the most significant and extensive collections of prehistoric paintings in the world.
These are among the oldest images in existence. They were made more than 35,000 years ago, and they depict many animals, including wild oxes, woolly rhinos, and cave lions that have long been extinct in Europe. There are also humans here, in the form of red hands that have been printed or stenciled against the rock, and that seem to wave out at us from across the millennia. All of the images here are just exquisite, both technically and imaginatively. And they prove, I think, that for all of our advances over the last 30,000 years, we are no better at image making than they were.
And yet this entire cave system is itself a kind of image. The cave paintings at Chauvet are too delicate for the public to visit, so an elaborate replica was made. The original caves were mapped and scanned. 6,000 images were then used to create a three-dimensional model of the space. The walls were constructed from concrete and resin. A team of artists then made copies of the artworks, so accurate that they are almost indistinguishable from the originals.
This mist-filled valley spans the entire history of image making, from the oldest methods, charcoal and ochre on stone, all the way through to state-of-the-art laser scanning and 3D modelling. And yet, despite their differences, and despite the fact they were made 35,000 years apart, this Chauvet and the original Chauvet are shaped by the same impulse, an impulse that has been with us throughout human history. The desire, the need to make images. Can we really trust what we see?
Explore the technology behind deepfake image manipulation and discover the cultural significance of the lens throughout history. Go to bbc.co.uk/Age of the Image and follow the links to the Open University.
Tomorrow night, post-impressionist Georges Seurat's least-known painting of three nudes is the focus for Waldemar Januszczak. His art mysteries continue at 8:30. And one not to miss on Wednesday night, the home movies of a Scottish soldier. Harry Birrell presents Films of Love and War here at 9.